So this is a review for Malibu Beach Party, released in 1940. It's the 299th of the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. As you'll see throughout this review, there's no official restoration at the time of this recording. Hopefully one day it'll happen, although this print isn't exactly the worst in the world, so it's not like a 5th generation VHS print that you see in some of the Buddy shorts or anything like that. But as with any short, hopefully it'll get restored. The short is under copyright, so I can't show you the full thing here on YouTube, otherwise the video will just get blocked. Only Warner Brothers can put this on their own channel, and because of one character, I highly doubt they will. But in case you haven't seen it, this is really one of those Hollywood parody shorts that Warner Brothers was doing at this time, and they would sort of stop doing this at about the mid-1940s. But every so often you get these kind of shorts where you just got parodies of celebrities, and then try and cram in as many as they possibly can. In this case, you have Jack Bunny and Mary Livingston. They host a beach party at Jack's home, and they just have a whole bunch of Hollywood stars that all happen to be there, and that's pretty much it. So there's nothing too deep here. Because this is another short that has a lot of Hollywood caricatures in it, I will go through each and every one. Because there's so many, I'm not going to go in depth who each and every one of these people are, otherwise I'd be here forever, and this would be probably a 2 or so hour video. Good for the algorithm, but bad for my sanity. But at least you'll know who they are, and you can look them up, and I'll still tell you very briefly who these people are, so that way you get a rough idea at the very least. But this is not the first time Friz Freleng has done this sort of thing. By this point, he's returned back to the Warner Brothers studio and he's made a few shorts, but before he went to MGM for a brief period of time in the late 1930s, he did do a few shorts that caricatured a lot of celebrities, such as the Coconut Grove. So it's not the first time he's done this, and I don't know, he seems to get quite a kick out of it. But again, once we reached the mid-40s, these sort of shorts became out of flavor. Although in the 1950s, they would do this sort of thing again, but more television focused because television picked up at that point. Here, radio and movies were still king. So all the stars that you see here are pretty much people that are prominent on the radio or in movies. But let's also put this whole thing into context as well, because you're wondering, okay, who is Jack Bunny? Who is Mary Livingston? And Winchester, instead of Rochester, who are they? Okay, so that comes from the Jack Benny program. So you have Jack Benny being Jack Bunny here, although he's not a bunny this time. He's been parodied in a few other Warner Brothers shorts as Jack Bunny, so why they chose not to do that here, well, they probably just wanted to keep everything consistent, so there's that. Mary Livingston was actually his real-life wife, and they played together on the Jack Benny program. And then later on, you'll see an African-American character here named Winchester, but in the show is Rochester, so real name Eddie Anderson. He was actually the first black person to have a role in a national radio show, because around that time, unfortunately, a lot of African American characters were portrayed by white actors doing black voices. If you look at Amos and Andy, they had white actors doing their roles, doing their stereotypical African American voice or sound, whatever you want to call it, right? So in this case, it's rather significant. And yes, if you look at Rochester, it's your typical valet type character, treating all the other characters who, of course, are white. It's like, sir, yes, sir, and so on. But if you watch those shows, you could see Rochester as somewhat of an equal, that, yeah, he's a valet, but he's actually not such a subservient character. So it was definitely a rather unique thing. And later on, Eddie Anderson would speak very highly of Jack Benny anyway, and he was proud of his role in the show. Would they do things a little differently these days if they were to do some kind of a quote-unquote reboot? I hope not. Please do not do a reboot of this, okay? But I'm just giving an example, okay? They would have approached the character differently, but with him being the first black man on radio, and in such a prominent role at the time, that was a pretty big deal. But of course, in this short, he's portrayed by Mel Blanc, who would typically do the Rochester voice. It is what it is. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the short from start to finish, and I'll go through those references. I'll go through all the other people at this big party. Again, not sure why all these people will happen to be at this party. Even some of the swankiest Hollywood parties, you would certainly not have this many celebrities, but I guess that makes it a little bit funnier. I don't know. But let's take a look at this short. So we start off by having an invitation, and it's a great way to start off the short. You know exactly what's going to happen just from this very brief invitation. And you see this coupon. It goes, "This coupon and 50 cents entitles to the bearer to a free 25-cent blue plate lunch." So, first of all, Inflation calculator, 50 cents would be about $12 today, so that alone is pretty funny as it is this swanky Hollywood dinner, but it's only a $12 dinner. And yet the Blue Plate lunch, that's a reference to the Blue Plate special. I know a lot of Americans would know this, but for those who aren't American like myself, because I didn't know this, it's not a thing here where I am, but that's a discount price meal, and that changes pretty much daily. So you'd see this in diners and that sort of thing. And the fact that it's 25 cents, so it's only a $6 voucher, it just shows how cheap Jack Bunny actually is, or Jack Benny, because that was one of the running gags in the actual show. Jack Benny plays himself, but as a different character, because this is not what he was actually like. So he played this very stingy, vain person who thinks he's great at playing the violin, and I will point out the violin a bit later on. But yeah, people who are familiar with the Jack Benny program, and it was a very popular program, so a lot of people would know about it, they would have certainly gotten a kick out of this. So we start off and we see Jack Bunny and Mary Livingston. So the Jack Bunny character here is voiced by Jack Lescoulie. And by the way, all his voice credits I'm about to give you come from Keith Scott's wonderful Cartoon Voices book, and I have a link below to that book. It definitely belongs on every serious animation fan's library, so that way you can see who voiced what, because a lot of these actors would be uncredited in these shorts.
What's that you got on, Jack? Your underwear?
No, Mary. For your information, it's my bathing suit. Well, here come the guests now. What a day. What a crowd. And what a party.
This is not the first time Jack Lescoulie has done a parody of Jack Benny, Jack Bunny, whoever. He's done it in a few others. He did a similar voice in Daffy Duck and the Dinosaur, a Chuck Jones short, where he's clearly parodying Jack Benny, even though the actual Cayman's not really, but anyway.
Well, now isn't that clever? The hunter's helper. Now come on!
So yes, it's not the first time he's done a voice in a Looney Tunes short, but he would typically do a lot of the Jack Benny stuff, and he was an American radio and television announcer and host. In a few decades after this, he would actually be on NBC's Today. So I know that's something I know. I thought I'd look him up a bit more for this review, and sure enough, he had a very long career, even while past being a radio announcer. Sarah Berner, she's done quite a few voices for the Warner Brothers shorts, and it would typically be whatever female character that they need voiced, and she also did a lot of celebrity caricatures and parodies as well. So in this case, she does the voice of Mary Livingston, so there you are. Oh, and I loved Carl Starling's musical puns, and in this one, I have to mention it. The song being played at the beginning when they're having the little banter involving Jack Bunny's swimming suit, the one that Robert Taylor wears, but he fits in better, ha. And again, that kind of banter you'd hear in the radio show, so they definitely got it down right here. But the song you hear is, I Love the Name of Mary. Great choice.
Yeah, and what a suit.
Mary, there's nothing wrong with this suit. It's the same kind Robert Taylor wears.
Yeah, but his had a better filling.
Quiet. Here they come now.
So our first two caricatures, you see Bob Hope, well-known entertainer, made a lot of great movies. If you haven't seen a Bob Hope movie, do yourself a favor, definitely do so. He lived to be 100, actually, and he even had a voice in The Simpsons. That's my Simpsons reference. So yeah, he had a very long and prolific career. And of course, you hear California, Here I Come, very briefly, because why not? But the next bit you see is Bette Davis, and why is she dressed up like the Queen? It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because why would an actor dress up as a character going to a party? But in this case, she played the Queen in The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex. So that was a film that came out in 1939. Of course, you also hear God Save the Queen in the background, because why wouldn't you? But that's what that reference is. And Bette Davis, if you don't know, she was a well-known film actress. Many great films, definitely check her out. And then we hear the musical cue Cheyenne for whatever reason, when we see Andy Devine. And Andy Devine here is voiced very briefly by Danny Webb, and I love the vocals there. Now, Andy Devine's been parodied quite a few times in Looney Tunes, but just briefly, he was a character actor, and he did a lot of Western films, and he would have that distinct voice, which Danny Webb expertly parodies here. Next up, we see Spencer Tracy, and he's a well-known actor who's been in many prolific roles. And what he's parodying here is his role as Henry M. Stanley in the movie Stanley Livingston that came out in 1939. So it's interesting how a lot of these parodies were very recent because this would have been in production in late 1939, so it would have been fresh in everyone's minds. So of course he's saying Dr. Livingston, I presume, because that's what that's all about. So it's basically the Stanley character looking for David Livingston, who was presumed lost in Africa, and so on.
Miss Livingston, I presume.
That's it, yeah, that's it.
Next one, though, is interesting because you see Kay Kaiser, who was an American band leader, and he voices himself. Now, that audio comes from Africa Squeaks, and Africa Squeaks also had a parody of Spencer Tracy doing the whole Dr. Livingston thing, so it's all repeated here, just in a different way. So, for most people, this sort of thing will go over their head, but when you've watched all of the shorts, like I have, you can sort of connect the dots and go, wait a minute, they did something similar, and this sort of comes across as a bit of an in-joke, whether intentional or not. You then hear Aloha Oi, which is usually used as a goodbye theme because we see the actor Robert Donat, and he ends up leaving the party. Why? Because she says goodbye, Mr. Chips. That's another film that came out in 1939, and that's who the actor is still dressed up as. Again, why is he at a party dressed up in his character? Who knows? It's a weird party, isn't it? So now we've got a few actors sitting at the pool, and we just hear some laughing, I guess. But look, these are all actors, and you can definitely look them up, so I'll just go through them from left to right. So you have Carole Lombard at the left, you got Donna Michi, Fred McMurray, Loretta Young, and Robert Taylor. So definitely look them all up. Wonderful actors all. Now we get a wonderful little dad joke, at least if you know who the actor is anyway. So he says, boats, yachts, rafts. And the reason it says rafts is because this is a parody of the actor George Raft. Ha ha. The reason he's flipping a coin, and that's based off of his role in Scarface, where he played a gangster who would always flip a coin. And if you haven't seen that film, do yourself a favor and definitely do so. We see Clark Gable, because they always parody his big ears, right? So, of course, he's using that to paddle himself across the water. It's silly, but what do you expect? We then also see Greta Garbo, so the actress that was notoriously private, and later on she would just leave the Hollywood sphere completely and just lived her life, and that's pretty much it. But her feet were always made fun of in these animated shorts, and this is no different because she can surf with ease, as you can see right here. Then we see at the beach Cesar Romero, who was a heartthrob at the time, and later on he perhaps would be most famously known as playing the Joker in the Batman TV series, but he was in many, many things, and yeah, he was definitely seen as a heartthrob and a quote-unquote confirmed bachelor. But then we see John Barrymore, who would speak in a rather Shakespearean voice, and he says, I've come to bury Caesar. Ha ha, burying Cesar Romero. Okay, fine, we get it.
I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
But that's interesting because this is one of those few times where a lot of the jokes would actually go over people's heads, because if you don't know the name of these characters, then the jokes wouldn't quite land. But in this case, now that you know, now you get it, right? But then again, if I have to explain a joke, well, we all know how that goes, right? I'm sure the audiences at the time would have also gotten a kick seeing these different actors together, and especially when they perhaps haven't had a movie together or anything like that. So we then hear Melancholy Mood in the background because we're going to see Ned Sparks, and this is not the first time he's been parodied in Looney Tunes, so he was an actor that will always have that grumpy looking face. So, of course, they was going to parody him being essentially pissed off. And then we even see a crab, and that's voiced by Mel Blanc, but the Ned Sparks character is voiced by Danny Webb. And I like the added touch that even his bathing suit's just all dark, just reflecting his mood. It's hilarious.
I never go anywhere, I never do anything, I never have any fun.
Ah, shut up, you old crab!
But then we see Fanny Brice, and that's her playing a character, Baby Schnooks, and that's the character that she was perhaps best known for, and she would just play this overgrown child. And she's voiced by Sarah Berner here. If you've seen the movie Funny Girl starring Barbra Streisand, you pretty much know the life of this actress. So the two of them have a discussion, which again would have never happened in real life most likely, at least in this way, and she's upset that Ned's not letting her dump sand on him. He's thinking, sure, okay, and well, she backs up this dump truck, which is incredibly small if you look at the scale of it, but whatever. It's still pretty funny, if expected.
I don't like to be covered with sand. All right then, brat. Anything to keep you quiet.
Now, when Jack Bunny says he's going to have a little surprise for everyone, we see more actors just sitting around waiting for the excitement to start, I guess. And again, why all these people would be here at the same time, I don't know. But you have Charles Boyer, funnily enough, one of the inspirations for Pepe Le Pew, Adolphe Menjou, Claudette Colbert, James Cagney, and Alice Faye. What a weird and eclectic mix of celebrities in that one shot. If there's a reason some of these actors are together and I've missed any references, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I haven't seen every single 1930s movie out there, so there might be this obscure thing that I've missed. So definitely let me know, because I'd like to know, and it'll be good for everyone else to know as well. Of course, the joke is that I've spared no expense to this party, which will of course bite him later on once we see the violin bit later.
I have spared no expense to make this party a big success.
Is that you talking, boss?
Keep still, Winchester. Play, Pill. Okay, Jackson, I'm right on the beam.
But we end up being introduced by Phil Harris and his corn-fed cuties. Phil Harris here is voiced by Jack Lesculi as well. Now, Phil Harris, people are going to know him perhaps best of all from his role as Baloo in The Jungle Book and Thomas O'Malley in The Aristocats and Little John in Robin Hood. But before all of that, he was a band leader, he was an entertainer, he was a singer and all that stuff. So I guess when Disney had him in mind later on for The Jungle Book, well, that was just on the basis of him being on the radio, and he was definitely prominent on the Jack Benny Show as well. So again, people familiar with Jack Benny Show would definitely have gotten a kick out of seeing Phil Harris here because he was on that show. Now, I'm actually not sure what the reference is to the actual band name. I know that Phil Harris identified as a Southerner, and he did like to sing a song, That's What I Like About the South, so I'm wondering if that's just to do with the corn thing. So if you're more familiar with Jack Benny, because I've seen some things, I haven't seen them all, let me know in the comments below. But we see Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dance, but as we pull back on the camera there, we see that they're dancing, but it looks kind of rotoscoped, doesn't it? So I don't know if the animator actually rotoscoped anything or if that's their approximation of their dance. I don't know. It's fine for what it is, but it's definitely a weak shot there. But it gets the point across. Doesn't really matter. Although I probably would have gone the Tex Avery route and actually had them maybe dance poorly or something just to parody the fact that they're such wonderful dancers. But then I like how they just start dancing a different dance all of a sudden. And again, it looks kind of rotoscoped, doesn't it, when they dance that? But in any case. Now, once all that ends, we see that Jack Bunny asks Winchester to fill up the guest's glasses and showing off how much of a cheapskate he's using the eyedropper, which, again, if you're familiar with the routine, be pretty funny. But I like how Winchester says, I don't think half a pint would be enough. And then Jack Bunny says, well, dilute it. So again, if you know about his cheapskate nature of a character, well, yeah, this will be even more funnier.
Coming right up, Mr. Bunny. But I don't think that half a pint's gonna be enough.
Well, dilute it.
Okay, boss. But you're gonna have a powerful big water bill next month.
So we then see Deanna Durbin, as she was a soprano and actress, and she appeared in a lot of musical films, and she now sings the song Charisma. Although I like during that song that you see Ned Sparks there and he finally smiles. I think this is the only time you see him in a Warner Brothers short actually smiling, and yeah, he struggles to even get that going for him.
They're calling to you and to me. Oh, come, raise your eyes, my dear one, and join.
But we then see Mickey Rooney, who was a child actor, and he had a very long, prolific career. He worked right up until his death, really, in the early 2010s. But here specifically playing a character called Andy Hardy, and he was in a series of 16 films. And it was all around the Harding family, and he was the only actor to be in all 16 films, including one revival where they tried to revive it in the 50s that wasn't successful. Again, definitely look it up when you get a chance. When she ends up throwing that flower during the song, the person that catches it isn't Mickey Rooney, as Andy Hardy, of course. It's Archie Leach. Oh, sorry, Cary Grant. Archie Leach is his real name, but he's a prolific actor, has been in many wonderful movies. Definitely check him out. Now, according to Keith Scott's Cartoon Voices book, all that singing done by Deanna Durbin was done by a lady by the name of Marie Green. Now, I can't seem to find out further details about her, so if you do know more about her, definitely let me know in the comments. And in the final bit, and easily the best bit in the short, in my opinion at least, especially now that I know what the Jack Benny program's all about and what kind of character he actually is, he introduces now the main attraction, which is himself.
Folks, I have a real treat in store for you. The feature attraction of this afternoon, an artist with rare ability and fine technique. A person you all know and love, Mr. Jack Bunny.
Yeah, he thinks he's talented when he's really not. And the song you hear in the background when he's trying to introduce his act is The Devil May Care. But I like the fact that he holds up the applause sign, which he happens to have with him, and no one applauses. So yeah, that's typical of what was going on in the show. So he even makes Winchester actually use the applauding device, which it's pretty clever. So we now see that Jack Benny is going to play Trummerai, because of course he's going to pick Trummerai as a song, right? Now, Trummerai is a beautiful song. If you actually heard of it, it comes from Kinderschenen, which is Scenes from Childhood by Robert Schumann, and Trummerai is one of 13 pieces as part of that work, and it's perhaps the most well-known. It's a beautiful piece of music, and it's used quite a lot in Looney Tunes, actually, used in a lot of very sappy type scenes, and it's quite well suited for that. Here, though, as expected, Jack Bunny butchers it, and I mean butchers it.
I will play in answer to numerous requests, Trummerai.
And again, this whole thing is exactly how it played out on the radio and then later TV show. And I just like how the celebrities are all very unimpressed and they all get up and leave. But you gotta wonder though, the person playing that violin though, it's actually not easy if you're an expert musician and you're told to play badly, so you have to remind yourself to play the wrong notes and you have to keep going with it. It's not that easy, but whoever played the violin in this scene definitely did a good job. Plus, I like the fact that he had Phil Harris's band there. Why not just get him to play music throughout the whole day and that's it? Did he really need to stop him doing that just to play the violin himself? I get it, that's the joke, right? But still, it's ridiculous. And even Winchester tries to leave too, and who can blame him? This sounds awful, and I'm not even a musician. Now, I thought the ending was kind of weak. They could have done maybe a better punchline here. So basically, he sits on Rochester's back saying, hey, someone's got to listen to this, right? And Winchester says, under the circumstances, yes. And then Jack Bunny says, good night, folks, in the same way that he would on his show. But I don't know, I felt they could have done something a little more stronger there, like maybe, I don't know, make all the celebrities, they can't leave, they have to listen to him or something. I still feel they could have done something a little bit better there. But in any case, this is one of those shorts, it's just one of those unique little time capsules. It's not really ha-ha funny, especially if you don't know the references. If you know the references, like the Caesar reference, it can be quite funny. But look, it's more interesting than funny. It's very obscure. There's a reason this, aside from the Rochester parody, of course, that it's not played much on TV. Look, 6 out of 10 I think is more than fair. I do still want to see this restored. I think this would look very nice, fully restored, but it is what it is. But I hope you guys have learned something new in regards to all the actors featured in this. Definitely look a lot of them up. A lot of their works are definitely more entertaining than this short, but again, it's interesting as a curio to watch. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
Isn't this number beautiful, Winchester?
Under the circumstances, yes.
Good night, folks.